help from my friends.
Right.
And it will be 10 to 12 minutes. Is that good? All right, so for the timer, 10 to 12 minutes. Please help me welcome Trevor Sebastian.
Good morning, fellow Toastmasters and honored guests. Today, I'll be telling you a story about how I was able to learn a few things and become the person I am today with a little help from my friends. Oh, come on. Okay, I'm gonna have to click my keyboard. So, here's a picture of me. This is when I was in my early 20s or so. On the left there, you have my beautiful mom, who some of you have seen before, my sister, myself, and my dad. And as you can see, I'm a bit awkward here, sitting in the middle of them. And that's kind of how I felt in my early 20s, just kind of trying to understand who I was and really what I wanted to do with my life. And here I'm a few years later, a little bit more dapper. I have my suit on and everyone's looking really good. This is at a wedding. And slowly as I went to school and started learning a bit about myself, I was feeling more confident in who I was and what I wanted to do with my life. And at one point I even grew a beard. And as you can see, it doesn't look very good, at least from my opinion. But years pass, time passes, and I trimmed the beard a little bit and to what you all see today. And here's a really wonderful occasion. This is me graduating from a master's program at Cal State Fullerton in experimental psychology. And life is filled with these wonderful moments, right? And I spent so much time in school trying to learn about psychology and really what I want to do with my life. But none of the time that I spent in school could prepare me for once I got out of school and into the real world, working my job. And the thing that I need to prepare for was becoming a leader. You see, they don't teach this in school. You have to take a lot of tests. You have to learn a lot of material. The one thing they don't teach you is how to be an effective leader. And that's what I had to learn with a little help from my friends. It's actually kind of funny because when I first started school, I wanted to become a chemist. I love chemistry. It was so interesting taking things from nothing and making something out of them or changing the properties of them. But as many people might know, most chemistry classes have a lot of math, and it's very, very hard. And of course, there also was a underlying knowing that I'd be spending the rest of my life in a lab. And I spent a lot of time in retail, and you would think that retail for most people, and it was a pretty miserable experience. But the one thing I learned when I was in retail is that I loved working with people. There was something about it, something about helping someone figure out what they needed to get. And so I realized that with my scientific brain and to work with people, I wanted to become a psychologist because then I'd be able to help people with their problems, be able to get them to a place where they would feel ready to conquer the world. So I went to school, I learned psychology, and eventually I went to a master's program, as you all saw before. But in my time during master's, I started a job doing something called applied behavior analysis. And this job is where you basically work with kids who are diagnosed with autism or other intellectual disabilities. And when I was doing this work as a behavior therapist, I really loved this work. It seemed very obvious to me. You come in, you do what you're supposed to do, you see gradual improvement. It wasn't as mentalistic as psychology. So I went ahead and really went full force with it. And instead of becoming a psychologist, I went ahead and went both feet forward into becoming a behavior analyst. I got my certification, and that's really what I'm doing every single day today. At one point, I started moving up the ranks. I became a supervisor at some point. I wasn't doing direct work with clients anymore, but I had a bunch of staff that were doing direct work, and I had to manage them. Now, the problem with this is that I learned so much about how to become a behavior therapist, but I learned nothing about how to become a leader. This is really where all this comes into play. How do I become an effective leader for these people that I'm working with so that they can become effective therapists as well? When I first started this job, I cannot tell you how much I felt like an imposter. I felt like I had no idea what I was doing. I'd walk into a client's home. The interventionist would ask me so many questions, and I would try my best to answer them. And I would leave the home feeling like I told them a bunch of garbage. And it wasn't a very fun feeling. So I did what I normally do when I don't know what the next step is in my life. And I turned to books. To me, books are such a wonderful way to really learn something and to better understand anything that you really need help on. And so I realized that in my books that I need to have some mentors, some people that help me along in my journey. And there were two names that came to mind. These are my two friends that first came to mind, which were David Goggins and Jocko Willink. And I've never met these people in my life, never. But I did read their books. And they really hold an important place in my heart, even today. These are them. And these two people, they are ex-Navy SEALs. So it seems kind of strange to be getting some advice, some career advice from these two people when they have nothing to do with what I do for my job. But to me, they really showed me so much about leadership, how important it is to work under pressure, how important it is to work with people whose lives are put at danger every single day. By reading their books and understanding exactly what they were talking about when it came to leadership, I was better able to understand myself and to be more confident in how I was as an effective leader. Now, I learned a lot from these two people, but the one biggest takeaway I took from them was that leaders lead by doing. This, even to this day, is my preferred leading method. I want to make sure that I show all the people who are looking at me that I can do what they need to do, that I can show them the way and I can model it. And when they need help, I'm there for them to help them. But at the end of the day, I want them to be able to take the reins and do what they have to do. So I always want to make sure that I lead by doing. Now, these are just two names. There's a lot more names to come. These are three more people that helped me incredibly on my journey. These are people that were from my organization: Daniel Raymer, Ellen McNicol, and Ashley Lebnowski. Now, Daniel is someone who was a really great help in the beginning of my journey. As you can see, he is a guy, which might not seem like a very important factor for most people, but in my field, there are a lot of women. Because I work in childcare, I work with kids, there is about 2 guys to about every 20 females. And for the most part, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really bother me. But sometimes it does feel like I'm a little out of place. It feels like I don't exactly know how to present myself in front of my customers, in front of my clients, and in front of my peers. Daniel was a director at the time, and he really showed me what it meant to be a guy in my field, what it meant to be an effective leader in the sense of being a guy. And he was a great help as well because he was so motivational for me to move forward in my career and to become a supervisor in the first place. The next person is Ellen, and she is my current supervisor, my current boss, and she has been an absolute wonderful help in becoming an effective leader. She's someone who has so much experience, so much knowledge in the field. She's actually been in applied behavior analysis for over 12 years, which is pretty interesting because she looks very young, but she has a wealth of knowledge. The one thing that Ellen has really taught me is that mistakes happen all the time, that you're going to fall, you're going to fail, but that's okay because you're going to learn from those experiences and you'll be better the next time. And also we do work with a very vulnerable population. And sometimes we get a little in our heads. We want to make sure that we do the best that we can with every single client. But sometimes we don't know what the best approach is. And that it's okay. That in the end, as long as the client is doing better, that it's okay. That it's okay to make these mistakes. And she's been really helpful to my everyday experience. Now, for a very brief while, I was actually a trainer in my organization. I was able to take new therapists who wanted to join our company and teach them everything they needed to do in order to be in the field and to be effective interventionists. And this was for about a year. And unfortunately, I lost this position due to COVID. They didn't need a trainer anymore because they went to a virtual model. And I was a little bit sad because I absolutely loved the position. But in the end, I learned so much as being a trainer. And the person who was my supervisor when I was a trainer was someone named Ashley Lebnowski. It took me a while to learn her last name, by the way. It's a very, very tough one. She was a wonderful experience, and being a trainer was one of the most eye-opening experiences for myself when it came to becoming a leader, because now I had lots of people at one time looking at me and looking at me for answers and questions. The biggest thing that I learned from being a trainer and from Ashley was how to have difficult conversations. Sometimes we would have people who wanted to become therapists, and they tried so hard. They literally gave it 110%, but we just could not pass them. We could not hire them because they really were not meeting some really important qualities that would be detrimental to our clients, which are the most important thing to us. I had to have these conversations, and they were tough. And she pushed me through them, and I stumbled. Sometimes I would say things that I shouldn't have, or I said things that were maybe a little mean, you could think. But she taught me how to finesse my words so that the person left the room feeling better than they came in. So I'm eternally grateful for these 3 people. And now I want to add a couple more names to this list. Oh, sorry. One thing I learned from these 3 people was that leaders don't lead alone. Because in the end, all leaders have a supporting cast who help them become wonderful and effective leaders. And these 3 people helped me become the best leader that I could. Now I want to add a couple more names to this list. Everyone here today, you are all on this list as well. You see, when I was the VP of education, I had to learn a lot. I had a lot of different duties that I needed to do. Here we go. A lot of different duties that I needed to do. I had to motivate members to speak. I had to create a schedule every single week, and I had to teach people how to use pathways. And all of these experiences were very difficult to learn because they were very new to me. They had nothing to do with my job. But I was able to take these new things that I had to learn, and I was able to have mentors that were also my friends. And that was an amazing experience. I'm a little sad because my whole experience has been via Zoom. It hasn't been in person, but it doesn't matter because in the end, I still learned so much as the VP of education, and I'm so excited to be continuing to do it every single day. The one thing that I learned as the VP of education is that leaders are always learning, and I will always be learning. I will never be the best possible leader that I can be because there's always so much more to learn. And that's what I took away from all the amazing names that I now can put in my pocket. And the only thing that I can hope is that one day there will be someone up here talking about the leaders in their life, and my name will be on that list instead. Thank you so much.